I am recording. Hello, little rascals. Welcome
Hello.
back to our finale of Witch by Eva Ibbotson. I figured out the correct pronunciation of her name. It is
Nice.
Ibbotson. And so this is our finale. We will find out exactly what happens to Araman, Belladonna, Madame Olympia.
And Terrence, where's Terrence? That was
Yeah,
the
where
cliffhanger.
what happened to Terrence? Exactly, right? One of our main characters. He's a standout character.
Hmm.
He came in and kind of stole the show,
He
so
helped Belladonna.
so we're gonna find out exactly what happens to everyone and see how these wizards and witches and so forth
This
turn out.
British Adams family.
Exactly. And
But there's no
speaking.
hands.
Well, there are things. We got an ogre. We've got the
You
person
got
with
the
the tail. We
Kraken.
got a
That's the
ghoul.
thing.
Oh, that's true. We
You're
did.
right.
Oh,
We got the
oh.
Kraken. Kraken is
Speaking
the
of a
thing.
kraken, I found this
Oh,
kraken.
wow. That's awesome.
Aw, he's so cute.
That.
That's adorable.
Where did
That's
you get
great.
that?
I have. He's one of my favorite stuffies.
I love it. That is definitely all those legs. That is a total Kraken. So
Mhm.
we're
And
gonna
this is my
find out what
favorite part
happened to the
when
Kraken
he's
as well.
angry, angies, and
Ooh.
happy kraken.
Oh, very nice. It
I
flips. That's
love
cool.
it.
That's cool.
Happy
I
kraken.
like it. I like
I
it.
absolutely love it.
I'm prepared. I didn't read ahead, so I don't know when we're going to need him. But should we
Good.
need him,
You know what?
he's
I
here.
don't want you guys to read ahead unless you really want to read ahead. That's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna be picky either way, but I mean, I love it when you are surprised. You know what I mean? Because that's what this is all about. This book club is not about having a tech rehearsal or a meeting about the meeting, or and we're not doing all that because
Yeah.
people don't have time to do all that. And what we like to do is just meet and have fun, read it and have fun with it. That's all I
Yes.
want you guys to do.
I love it.
You know what I
I've
mean?
been
Yeah.
loving it. This has been so
Yeah.
much
And
fun.
and you know
I,
what? You have been a jewel. And so
that's true.
thank you so much. And we absolutely love having you.
Thank
I
you.
will
So
also say that
we love
this book
having
was the
everybody.
spookiest.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm also going to say that this book has been the spookiest and the creepiest and the most grossed out I've ever been
So
of any of the
gross.
books of the book club, because this is not a
So
kid's
gross.
book.
Yeah,
No.
this
It's
isn't
not a
this
kid's
isn't a
book.
typical book that we would
No.
do. And also, this book has been a lot longer than what we typically do.
Yeah, but also
Because
creepy.
Zeely and Brad, you guys could, and of course Bob, he's been with it since the beginning, since its inception. But you guys can
Yeah,
um,
this was not like
back
any
me
other
up.
book we've
This is
done.
not like the books because we have done books in 2 sessions. Some in
Yes.
3. This
Yes.
one has taken 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
this
Yeah.
is a
Hey,
long
I
one.
missed 3.
hey, and speaking of, congratulations, Zeely. Can we talk
Yeah.
about
Thank
it
you.
publicly? Can we talk publicly about what you did and where you went?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm
Well, and we're
publicly.
recording. We're
Are
recording.
I
you?
know, that's why
Oh,
I'm
you are.
asking, can we talk
Wait,
publicly?
wait. Are you recording?
We are
Yes.
recording, so that's why I was asking, can
Oh
we
yeah, I
talk
better
publicly?
not.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So that's
Fair.
Sorry.
yeah.
But we're proud
So
of you. Let's just say
If we
we're
were
proud of you.
recording, I'd share. Yeah. It was
yes,
so
and you know
bad.
what? Let's do that afterwards when we stop recording, so that
Yes.
that won't
Yeah.
be on anything. But with all of that said, who's gonna go first? Numero uno.
Well, Patreon.
Chapter
203.
18.
Oh, chapter 18, page 203 on my book in my book.
Oh wow.
Chapter 18.
Well, my book is 195. So
Oh,
later.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's numero uno?
I'm trying to find chapter 18.
Page
Wow.
Alrighty, tally ho.
Wow.
203?
I
All
give
right,
you
Brad's
one,
picking
Brad?
first. Brad's first.
Brad's first. All right. 2. I'll go second.
All right.
Number 3.
I'll go.
All right. Number
I'll
4.
go, I'll go 4.
All
All
right.
right. I'm number 5.
Which number did I say I am? 2?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Y'all know I'm bad about that. All right,
Yes.
Brad, whenever you are ready, chapter number and hit it.
Tally ho. Chapter 18. Terrence, at that moment, was locked in a small dark room with high-barreled windows in the place he feared and hated more than any other in the world. For the worst thing he could have happened to Terence had happened. Metron had come unrooted. She sent out an alarm. She'd been recaptured as he ran across the road to go to the campsite, and now he was back in the home. It had happened so suddenly that he had no chance to defend himself. A police car had been waiting outside the gates. Even policemen didn't dare to go inside the gates at Darkington. Two men had stepped out of the car and grabbed him, and before he knew where he was inside the car and driving at 70 miles an hour back to Todcaster. The policeman had been quite kind, only telling
Okay. Him, what a stupid thing it was to run away. Children were always caught in the end, they said. Apparently, a tradesman who delivered groceries to the home had seen Terence at the station on the day he went to find Mrs. Ledbetter and had noticed him buying a ticket back to Darkington. But if the policeman had been fatherly enough, Matron had received the wobbegone little boy with a gloating triumph. She said nothing about the rooting. Most probably she had forgotten it. There's often loss of memory after rooting. But she had not forgotten her grudge against Terence. And now, after a night spent on a lumpy mattress with only a bowl of claggy porridge for his breakfast, he was waiting for her to come and punish him. The door opened and Matron entered. She was yellower and more like a camel than ever, and she began at once. Now then, what are we going to do with you? Beat you? Send you to Borstal? Keep you locked up for good? On she went, scolding and threatening, while Terence cowered against the wall and wondered why God hadn't given people earlids as well as eyelids so that they could shut out such dreadful sounds. And all the while his anxious thoughts raced back to Darkington. Had Belladonna noticed yet that Rover had gone? Had Araman learned that Sir Simon was a fake?
Anyone miss him and try to find him? Or would they think he'd run away because he didn't like it at the hall? No, they couldn't think that. They couldn't. Matron was still standing over him, shouting and blustering, the stream of ugly words pouring out of her mouth like pitch. She'd have liked to hit Terence, to knock him against the wall, but there was stupid health inspectors who came round these days and made trouble. One had actually had the nerve to tell her that her methods were old-fashioned. Still, there were plenty of things you could do that didn't leave marks. A pinch under the wrist, for example. Matron had a special line in pinches. So, just you remember, my boy, one squeak out of you, one more bit of trouble, and you'll stay in this room for the rest of your life. Do you understand? Terence nodded. In the few hours since he'd been back to the home, all his spark and bounce had gone. Terence could stand the blackest magic and enjoy it, but unkindness and spite just finished him. And so the grayness and misery of the home enclosed over Terence once again. By the time he'd eaten his boiled fish and black-eyed potatoes at the scrubbed dining table, had his fingernails inspected and put on his mackintosh for the boring walk they always took when there was no school, past the Formica factory, left at the gasworks, and back down the long road.
Seedy terraced houses. He'd almost forgotten that only a few hours ago life had been an exciting and wonderful thing. But just as the line of children led by the assistant matron, a watery lady called Miss Kettle, was crossing the road back to the home, a strange thing happened. Terence heard his name called, and looking up, he saw Miss Ledbetter carrying a shopping bag and waving her umbrella. Wait, she shouted. I want to speak to you. She marched up to Terence, ignored Mrs. Kettle, who was just wittering away at the head of the line, and said, "Just the person I want to see." "What you doing here? I don't know. I thought you were staying with my brother." "I was," said Terence, "but they caught me." He looked up at her eagerly. "If you could tell Mr. Ledbetter I'm here, please. I don't want him to think—" "Come along, Terence Mugg. No loitering," called Mrs. Kettle sharply. But Mrs. Ledbetter, who had once thrown a drunken actor down 3 flights of stairs, was not at all cowed by Miss Kettle. "What I was going to say," she said, bending down and speaking quickly to Terence's ear, "was that I've just had a message from the hospital from poor—"
Okay.
Monty Moon! He's so sorry he had to let you down. It was the van, the one belonging to the electrician. Monty says the tires were worn to a shred, but he wouldn't listen. Anyway, they ran into a ditch on the way to Darkington, and the whole lot of them were taken to hospital. Just cuts and bruises, but poor Monty didn't really come around till this morning. It was last night, wasn't it, when he was supposed to do the show?
Uh-huh.
Terence was looking at her in amazement.
Yes, he said. It was last night, but he didn't let us down. He did do the show. He was there. No, he wasn't. Not Monty. He's been in hospital since Sunday, and the stage manager and electrician with him. He never got to Darkington at all. That's what's worrying him on account of having taken the £500.
But now Miss Kettle had had enough. She left the front of the line, yanked Terence by the arms, and marched him away. My book is different. Terence made no move to resist. He had too much to think about. If Monty Moon had never got to Darkington, who had appeared from behind the tapestry? Who was the Elizabethan knight they had raised? Could it be? Didn't it have to be Sir Simon Montpelier himself?
Okay.
So Belladonna had really done it. But Rover hadn't been there. That was certain. The box Terence handed Belladonna was empty. And without Rover, Belladonna was absolutely white. Where had the darkness come from then? What did it mean? "Take your coat off, you lazy boy, and don't stand there dreaming," said Mrs. Kettle, who took her tone from Matron. Terence didn't even hear. The afternoon darkened. The children had beans on toast. Miss Kettle read them a story from Sir Pepper about a boy who had his thumbs cut off, and then they all trooped up to bed. Lying in his iron cot, looking at the same crack in the ceiling that he'd looked at for years and years, Terence heard Billy, in the next bed, begin to snuffle and cry. "What is it, Billy?" asked Terence. "I'm thirsty. I want to drink." "Well, why don't you go and get one?" "I'm scared," said Billy. He was partly deaf and wet his bed, and he was always in a terrible tune. "I'll go," said Terence. He slipped out of bed and tiptoed out into the corridor toward the bathroom. Matron and Miss Kettle were talking in the hall below, and they were talking about him.
Okay. Of course, he's a troublemaker, Mrs. Kettle agreed. But I've always felt, Matron, that you dislike him particularly. Dislike him? Of course I dislike him, and I've every reason to look. She held up her hand, and Mrs. Kettle peered at it. "The little finger, do you mean?" "Yes," she shouted Matron. "The little finger I do mean. The little finger that Terence Mugg bit to the bone and mutilated when he was brought to me, a babe in arms, and I bent over to say, 'You can bitty boo' to him, as I do all my babies. Even now I get shooting pains in it when a net—" "Goodness," said Mrs. Kettle. "And he was only 3 weeks old, wasn't he, when they brought him from the kiosk? Most unusual. Everything Everything about that horrible child is unusual. He gives me the creeps. Do you know, whatever you do to him, he never cries. Never. He'll sit there with his eyes like saucers and he'll wince with pain, but he's never shed a tear in all the time he's been here. It's unnatural. That's what it is. And I'll knock it out of him. See if I don't. A sharp noise from the top of the stairs made them both turn around. Terence was standing on the landing in his pajamas. He was standing perfectly still, as though in a state of shock. And the glass of water, okay.
He'd been fetching for Billy, lay in splinters at his feet. How dare you, Terence Mudd? How dare you get out of bed? Just you wait. You've gone too far this time. You've gone too far. Terence waited. He felt queer. There was a sort of roaring in his ears, and the landing felt as though it were rocking and swaying beneath his feet. Matron was on the first step, the second. Now she was almost on up to him, her arms outstretched to get him by the shoulders and shake him. Terence took a deep breath. He closed his eyes.
Okay.
Chapter 19. The Wizard Watcher, returning from a holiday it hadn't enjoyed at all, arrived at Darkington the following morning. And, as all three heads agreed, it was like coming back to a blinking funeral. Araman and Belladonna sat hopelessly entwined on the big sofa in the black drawing room, gazing into each other's eyes. Belladonna had packed her straw hat and folded her tent and was only waiting for Terence to be found before going away forever to a life of loneliness and begonias and pain. Except that it was beginning to look as though Terence would never be found. Mr. Leadbetter, who'd quite forgotten that the little boy was not really his nephew, had rung every hospital in the district in case there had been an accident. But no one had news of him, and the anxiety was dreadful.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Kraken wasn't exactly helping by tottering back and forth, saying "Daddy" to Ahriman and "Mommy" to Belladonna, and making both of them extremely wet. Nor did the wife slayer take any notice of the fact that everyone was so upset, but plashed up and down, droning on about how he'd smothered Lady Beatrice, strangled Lady Mary, and knocked off Lady Henrietta with a halibut. It was to this scene of misery that the Wizard Watcher returned, and it made no bones about saying that it wasn't the sort of homecoming it had expected. Not that Ahriman wasn't terribly pleased to see it. He was, and immediately introduced Belladonna, whom the monster took to at once. Very nice," said the middlehead, looking her up and down. "Better than all those goose-pimpled girls at Brighton," said the left-hand head, who had not really felt happy at the seaside. "When's the wedding?" asked the right-hand head. But this, of course, started all the unhappiness off again, and the lovers went back to the business of sighing and looking into each other's eyes, leaving the ogre and Mr. Ledbetter to explain the events that had led up to this day. The Wizard Watcher did what it could to cheer everybody up, but after half an hour during which the Kraken kept
trying to climb up its tail, so Simon told in horrible detail what Lady Olivia had said to the lavatory attendant, and Ahriman had declared for the 100th time that he would die without Belladonna. The monster had had enough. "Proper carry-on in there," said the middlehead. "It's worse than Blackpool." "Let's go out and get some fresh air," said the right. "Good idea," said the left. Get that little pressure off his tail anyway." And the twitching the Kraken carefully onto the floor, the monster waddled into the park. An hour passed. Mr. Ledbetter had had a list of police stations and was just about to pick up the phone to try again for news of Terence when they heard the great oak door in the hall burst open with a rebounding crash. Next came the sound of footsteps pounding upstairs. Then the drawing room door flew open as if pushed by a hurricane, and the wizard watcher came skidding into the room. Its heads were trembling, its eyes were blazing, and they could actually see its heart pounding in its chest. Never had anyone known the monster in such a state, and for a moment its excitement was such that it simply could not speak. Then the middle head began, and the other two joined in. The new wizard cometh.
Third cometh.
Okay.
He cometh.
He cometh. Right
cometh.
now, he cometh. Aramon rose with shaking knees and went to the window, and everybody followed him, stumbling with exhaustion. His small face lifted to the window of the hall. Terence Mugg was coming up the drive.
Okay, I want to pause right here for a second. Who said it was Terrence? Was that you? Bob,
Called
you
it.
and Melanie said it was Terrence. It was the wizard.
Mm-hmm.
You were right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, continue. Chapter 20.
That is the new you?
It's
Is
you.
that me?
I think that would be you, Danny.
Yes.
Or I can keep going if you'd rather.
Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, chapter 20. Are you suggesting we don't know our job? Said the middle head, looking very hurt. Yes, you are. Yes, are you? I mean, you made us, you know, said the left head. Oh, no, no, my dear fellow, said Aramon, who knew how sensitive the monster was. It's just, well, you see, this is Ledbetter's nephew. We've all been rather anxious about him. Of course, you haven't met him. You were away during the contest, but that's who it is. Terence, the name. Terence Mugg. Terence was sitting on the sofa next to Belladonna, who had rushed up to him, half carrying him into the room, and was now feeding him with cauliflower soup and bananas, pale things she'd been able to magic up quickly till Lester could get to the kitchen and rustle up a steak. Okay.
Now he stood up. Already being with the people he loved, he'd made his cheeks glow and chased the weariness from his face. Actually, sir, he began, I think maybe, but here he broke off because it was so difficult to explain. He didn't really believe it himself yet and had walked all the way from Todcaster rather than try anything that might not work and prove him wrong. So instead, he felt in his pocket and took out a piece of string, an apple core, an Indian rubber, and at last a blue tin punched with holes. Terence opened the tin. Inside was a small spider with hairy legs and a black cross on its back. What is it? Asked Aramon, as they all craned forward. Terence swallowed. It's matron, sir, he said. So then he began to explain, growing more confident as his story unfolded. And as he talked, it all became
Okay.
quite clear. And the only surprising thing was that no one had suspected it before. He began by telling what he'd overheard at the home, and as he spoke, they could see the tiny baby carried in and snapping at Matron with his full set of teeth, so that she had hated him bitterly from that day. They could see a small little boy who never cried because wizards, like witches, cannot shed tears, but a small boy who knew nothing of his powers because, unlike Mr. and Mrs. Canker, who had wisely encouraged their little Ariman, Terence had grown up in a place where people were ignorant and blind. And then, when he first met Belladonna, Terence went on, he felt, oh, not just that he loved her, everyone said Terence loved Belladonna, but a sort of feeling of belonging. And from the first moment when she tried to root Matron, Terence had her spells along with her and worked with her and felt with her. Whatever she did, he said, I had to do it. And sometimes I said extra spells on my own. Only I thought it was Rover the blackness came from. We both did. I was sure it was Rover. But then I met with Mrs. Leadbetter, and she told me that Mr. Moon had never come to the hall at all. He'd had an accident. But Sir Simon did appear, and I knew it couldn't be Rover because Rover had already gone. So,
Okay.
But this part was news to Lester and Mr. Ledbetter, and gobbledygook to Ahriman and Belladonna, and Terence had to stop while everybody explained everything to everyone else. Ahriman was most displeased to think that his servants had tried to play a trick on him. But when they explained that it was only because they were so sure that Belladonna was the wife for him, he couldn't really make a fuss.
Anyway,
Terence went on,
I couldn't understand what had happened because I knew Belladonna was quite light without the earthworm. So if it wasn't Rover and it wasn't her, who was it? And then when they said that about me biting so hard when I was a tiny baby, everything sort of clicked into place. And when Matron came charging upstairs at me, I just shut my eyes and, well, there she is.
and he held out the tape tin inside, which the spider was scuttling dementedly to and fro. The rejoicing after Terence had finished his story may be imagined. Belladonna hugged him and kissed him. Lester seized a saber and gulped it down joyfully in a single swallow. Ahriman came and pumped him by the hand. Oh, my dear boy, what happiness, what joy, what a relief! Don't you see, all our problems are solved. You shall stay here and attend to wizardry and darkness.
Okay.
And Belladonna and I can be married and live happily ever after. Oh, Harry, we can't, cried Belladonna, rushing into his arms. It doesn't matter what color our babies are now, does it? With a mighty wizard like Terence to take charge of things, I'm really going to be mighty wizard, said Terence, his eyes shining. Ahriman turned to him, his dark face serious for a moment. You have a great gift, boy, he said. A great gift. Necromancy at your age? I couldn't have touched it. Why, if I had called the thunder before the lightning, I was pleased as punch. No. It's my belief you're going to extend the frontiers of wizardry and darkness to unheard of depths. Of course, there's a lot of work before you, but you understand that, I'm sure. Oh, yes, sir. I'll work like anything. In the excitement and happiness which followed, everyone was careful to give the wizard watcher his due, and the useful monster sat there, contented, smiling on its faces, receiving the congratulations it knew it had deserved. Yes, it's a relief, said the middle head, nodding graciously. No use pretending it isn't. Those 999 days just sitting.
There took it out of us, said the left head, not to mention the chilblains. Still all's well that ends well, said the right head. There was only one slight snag which Mr. Ledbetter, drawing aside his employer, pointed out to Ahriman. If Sir Simon's real, sir, which it seems he is, what's to become of him? Because it's my belief that anyone else has to hear about Lady Mary or Lady Julia or Lady Letitia who guzzled, there'll be murder done, and it won't be him doing it. Ahriman nodded. A look of deep wickedness had come into his fiery eyes. Actually, Ledbetter, I have had just a very neat idea about Sir Simon. Oh, a very neat idea indeed. But first, we must have our wedding party. I want you to invite everyone, all the witches that took part in the contest for a start. Even the enchantress, sir, said Mr. Ledbetter, frowning. Ahriman smiled. Particularly the enchantress, he said.
Chapter 21. The day of the wedding dawned, and from all over the land there came caboodles and kelps, goblins and noggles, furries and fiends, to share the magician's happiness and to meet the new wizard whose coming had been foretold by the gypsy Esmeralda and whose power was said to be greater than Ammerman's own. No handsomer couple had the bridal pair could be imagined. Armand was in antlers and gold-patterned cloak. Belladonna's black ink dress was loose and flowing, and in her glorious hair she wore only a single simple spat. It was like short-haired bat that had invented an Aunt Spooky for her at the coven, and it had flown up specially to be with her on that great day. In the center of the table, on a blue velvet cushion that the ogre had fitted with a special sprinkler, lay
Okay.
Grover, looking rosy and peaceful now that it was understood that he was not a powerful familiar, but just an ordinary worm. Opposite him in a high chair sat Kraken, squeaking with excitement. Belladonna had managed to put him into nappies in spite of his 8 legs, and with his underneath wrapped in a snow-white muslin, he looked, as Terence said, almost like a bridesmaid, or perhaps a page. None of their friends had failed them. Mr. Chatterjee had flown back from Calcutta, the ghoul had left his slaughterhouse, and even Miss Leadbetter, though she didn't hold with magic, was there, bringing news of the Sunnydin home's new matron, a fat and friendly lady whom the children loved. The old matron had let loose in the rose garden where she was making herself useful, eating aphids and other insect pests, as spiders will. And the witches were there. However, much as they had sneered at Belladonna, now that she was Miss Canker and Wizardess of the North, they were only too ready to be friendly. Belladonna, of course, forgave them everything. Not only that, but when the feasting and rousting had died down a little, she laid a hand on Araman's arm and said, Murray, shouldn't we grant everyone a wish? Isn't that the thing to do at weddings? Well, my treasure, if that's what you want,
Okay.
Of course, granting wishes isn't exactly dark. Still, on such a happy day, we'll get Terence to do it. It'll be good practice. It would take too long to tell what all the brownies and kelpies and noggets wanted, and anyway, it was mostly money. Mr. Chatterjee didn't need a wish, because he'd tracked down the Princess Shari, the one who'd been a penguin, and was engaged to be married. The ghoul and Miss Ledbetter didn't hold with wishes, and Ethel Feedbag had fallen asleep with her head on her plate and couldn't be roused. But Mother Bloodwort knew exactly what she wanted. It's the turning myself young again spell, she said to Terence. I can't get it right myself, but you can. About 20, I'd like to be, or maybe 18. Gladys Trotter, the name was, and I'd like to be dressed nice. But when the wish had been granted, and Mother Bloodwort stood staring into the mirror at the young girl she had been, a very odd look spread across her face. I don't like it, she said at last. I'm sorry, but you'll have to turn me back again. All that swollen flesh and those bulgy pink cheeks. And what did I want all this hair for?
Okay.
So Terence turned her back again, and the old woman went back contently to her shack, where she lived for many more years, being sometimes a coffee table and sometimes a witch, and not doing any harm to anyone because she had forgotten how. After that, it was Mabel Wax's turn, and what she wanted was to have her legs turned back into a mermaid's tail. She said she was just sick of them itching and sick of humping Dorises about in the Holy Theseus bucket, and she felt bad, she said, about the way she had treated her aunts. For when all's said and done, water's thicker than blood, and you don't beat a wet family, said Mabel. So if you'll drop me off at that bit of a cliff where I did my trick, I'd find them soon enough. So so the wedding guests, glad of some fresh air after all this eating, trooped off to the Devil's Cauldron, and Terence gave Mabel a splendid tale and two gill slits for breathing underwater, and Belladonna kissed Doris lovingly on her vile green eyes. And sure enough, Mabel hit the waves. They could all see distinctly a set of plump and motherly arms pulling the witch and her octopus down to the foam. But when Nancy Shouter told the little boy what she wanted, Terence turned pale.
Okay.
For what Nancy
Oh, is that? Oh, go ahead.
It's
Sorry.
you.
for what Nancy wanted was no less than the impossible. She wanted Terence to
Reverse the bottomless hole, to turn it inside out and see if somewhere in its bottomlessness,
Somewhere in his bottom.
her
Sorry.
right,
We all have it every now and again.
right,
It's a
right.
different book club.
Well, okay, so somewhere in its bottomlessness, her sister Nora might be found. I don't know if I can do, well, I don't know if I can do that, said Terence anxiously. But with Aramin's hand reassuringly on his shoulder, he walked bravely to the east lawn, and the wedding guest followed. 1 second. If anyone had doubted up to then that Terence was a great and mighty wizard, they did not doubt again. For Terence just walked up to the hole with its notices saying danger and keep out, and took them down. Next, with his shoes, he scuffed out the pentacle of protection, and then he stepped forward and spoke to the hole. No one heard the words he used. What passed between him and it remains secret till the end of time. But the hole obeyed him. It knew its master. And with a frightful scream, a roaring judder, and a fearful lurch, it gave up its bottomlessness, turned inside out, and from its newfound bottom dredged up the crumbled, bewildered body of Nancy Shouter's twin. Cried Nancy, rushing forward and sending her chickens flying. Me, cried Nora, rushing into her sister's arms. Taking no notice of anyone, the two sisters stood there hugging each other and laughing for joy. Okay.
Then, you look a proper mess, said Nancy Shouter. You're all crumpled. Of course I'm crumpled, you stupid stick, said Nora. What do you expect? You shouldn't have pushed me into the hole in the first place. I didn't push you, you fell. I didn't, you did. And the quarreling happily, the two sisters picked up their chickens and walked away. But when Terence, carried shouldered high by the wedding guests, got back to the banquet hall to grant the enchantress her wish, he found her chair empty, except for a pair of moth-eaten stays, which she had bought in the Portobello Road, and poisoned in her parlor. Madame Olympia, it seemed, had returned to London, and with her had gone no less a person than Sir Simon Montpelier.
Oh,
So,
they're a great couple.
Yes.
so my plan worked, said Ahriman gleefully, rubbing his hands. I'll say it worked, said the ogre. I put the love pyther in each of their drinks, like you told me, and you should have seen them. The plaster down on his knees, asking her to marry him, and measuring her neck for a noose at the same time. And her accepting him and trying to get a squint at his molars to see how they look on her necklace. I nearly died.
Okay.
A well-matched pair, said Aramon. I wonder which of them will knock the other off first. He turned to Belladonna. Am I not clever, my little kitten? And Belladonna, gazing at him adoringly, said, Oh, the cleverest person in the world. But the best part of any party is the bit where the guests have gone and the family is left alone, tired and content. Terence lay on the hearth rug chatting to Rover. Lester was sharpening his bedtime sword. Aramon had taken off his antlers, and he and Belladonna were curled up on the sofa, making plans. They were going to build a little house on the other side of the park, quite close to the hall, but not too close, so that Terence would learn to manage on his own. Aramon was going to write a book, and Mr. Leadbetter was already
Okay.
wondering how to stop the magician jumbling up the pages and getting the typewriter ribbon jammed and putting the carbon paper in the wrong way round. So happy and peaceful did everybody feel that it was quite a while before they noticed that the wizard watcher wasn't quite itself. Its round and beautiful eyes were suspiciously moist, and it was allowing the kraken to slide down its tail as though it didn't really care what happened. Is anything the matter? Asked Ahriman. Now he came to think of it. The watcher hadn't really been itself at the party. It's hardly eaten anything, and talking had seemed an effort. The monster shook its heads. It's nothing, said the middle head in a low voice. Not anything, really, said the left-hand head. We're only making a fuss, the right-hand head agreed. By this time, of course, everyone was desperate, and Terence, who had loved the monster from the moment he saw it, put down Rover and came over, quite pop-eyed with concern. Please, said Ahriman, you must tell us. That's what friends are for, to share things with. The monster sighed heavily. Well, said the middle head, it's obvious, really, isn't it?
I mean, what are wizard watchers for? Said the left head. They're for watching wizards, aren't they? So when the wizard's been found, said the middle head, there isn't much use for the wizard watcher, is there? Sort of a spare the wizard watcher is then, isn't he? Said the left head. You could say useless, redundant, finished, said the right head, dashing away a tear. There was an absolute ghastly silence while everybody took one in the monster's grief and pain. Then Belladonna stepped forward, her eyes alight. How could you be so foolish? She said to the three heads. Surely you know the wizard watchers aren't just for watching for wizards. They're for watching over wizards. I thought everyone knew that. The monster lifted its heads. Terence may be a mighty and terrible wizard, but he's a very young one, Belladonna went on, while the little boy nodded eagerly. And skinny with it. Undernourished, you could say, said the right head. Short of sleep. I shouldn't wonder after the left, said the left head.
Okay. It's my belief a cup of warm milk in the middle of the day wouldn't hurt, said the middle head. Nor some hot soup at night. You can't beat hot soup, I always say. And plenty of fresh air. Everyone sighed with relief. The monster had withdrawn into a corner, busy and interested, and they could hear it working out a routine in which a young wizard could blight and smite and blast and wither, but sensibly. You'll be all right now, said Belladonna, drawing the little boy close. and the wizard who in years to come would be known as Mug the Magnificent, Blair of the Foolish and Master of the Shades, looked up at her with shining mud-colored eyes and said, "Oh yes, there'll be no one in the world as right as me." The end.
Yay! Yes, that's awesome.
Love it! Yay!
Yes.
Terrence Mug.
One more time.
One more time. That's
All righty then. That concludes
that was perfect.
Witch by Eva Ibbotson.